Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs?
What's up?
My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always, and today we got tight end sleepers for you. I hate saying this every tight end show, like legit everyone, but I feel like
what is that?
They're the most boring shows,
Especially tight end sleepers.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, it's like,
I will say though, we're pretty good at tight end sleepers for some reason. Historically on this podcast,
yeah, I would agree.
I feel
with
like
that.
it's one of our bigger hit rates on players.
What's that video of that kid talking about his high school football team? He's like, dog.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I need to
talk about the running backs.
Yeah. I need to find that clip, and then I need to create an audio sound clip of it, and then we can just, every time we're talking about a player we like, we can just smash it and go, dog. Like
Especially for tight ends.
No, that'll be our, like, if we really like a player, like I start going off on a player and I think a tangent about how much I like them.
Uh-huh.
Then we got to hit the dog button.
Dog.
Anyway, speaking of dogs, the Browns have a new dog logo.
They do.
What do you think of that?
I didn't really get a good enough inspection of it, but from what I saw, it looked fine.
Yeah, it's mid.
But I'm gonna look it up.
There was one that I thought was like I personally liked, but I thought it was too kiddie.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not great. It's kind of like a standard.
Apparently, there's all kinds of like subtle messages in there. So there's like a whole graphic about it. But anyway, yeah, sleeper tight ends today. So we'll break those down, and then we'll send you on your merry way. All right, let's do that. Before we do, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review, share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment your favorite sleeper tight end down below. The reason why I paused for so long there, Rick, was specifically because last week we recorded a mock draft show.
Yeah, we did.
And I was editing the show, and I was like, here we go. And then I realized that I never hit that. In our recording software, I have to hit this little R button so it actually records your voice.
Yeah.
And I never hit the R button on your voice. I only did it on mine, so I didn't have your voice. So I then had to take your voice from the Zoom recording that we have here because we use.
Oh, that's
Zoom.
gross.
And it sounds exactly the same as what it sounds like when I just drop it in the software. The problem is that my voice sounds terrible on the Zoom call. So I put it in the program, and then there was like this echo, and I had spent an hour and a half editing this stupid audio track. So I was making sure that I had the R selected on your name, so
right, so that the crap doesn't happen again.
After we started recording half of the show, and that's why I paused. So anyway,
no, that's valid.
Welcome to the show. All right,
welcome in.
Let's talk about some sleeper tight ends. Like I said, I want to say it should be a quicker one. But you never know. You never know with these things. So anyway, let's start off with the first guy. Chig Okonkwo. Conk. It's not Gronk, it's Conk.
I'm just going to call him Chig.
Okay, Chig's fine. So Chig is he's a very interesting prospect. I'm not like, there's a few areas that I think are good with him in terms of the tight end position. And when we talk about these tight ends, the reason why Rick and I would say the reason why Rick and I have so much success with this is because it's mainly tied to like our valuations of tight ends who have not broken out yet is mainly like tied to how much opportunity we think that player is going to get and where they are on the route tree. You talk about some of the best tight ends in fantasy football in the rankings. I'm just pulling up the list right now. Travis Kelce, arguably the number one target on his football team. Mark Andrews,
Yep.
arguably the number one target on his football team.
He for sure has been.
TJ Hawkinson, top 2. George Kittle, top 2. Kyle Pitts, top 2. Dallas Goedert, probably not. He's 3, so he's like one of the variables, but this is where you start getting into that area where it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Darren Waller, I would say probably top 2.
He's been top 2, yeah,
so,
in the past.
Like, to me, when you look at the top tight ends and compare them to the lower tight ends, the guys that you're going to get in the later rounds, so if you're possibly looking for a breakout tight end, you have to figure out where they are on the read progression, and are they going to be one of those guys that, you know, that a quarterback looks to throw the ball? Are they the first or second target on their team in terms of talent with receptions? Because if they're not and they're fourth, the likelihood of them being a breakout or being a really good tight end in fantasy football is unlikely. So with Chig, there's a situation. Obviously, things can change. D-Hop visited with the Tennessee Titans in the New England Patriots by the time you listen to this podcast, probably last week. And like if D-Hop has signed with the Tennessee Titans, obviously this changes a little bit. But there's some good things with Chig. He's one of the fastest tight ends in the NFL. 4.52, 96th percentile, 40-yard dash. Very fast. And he had some success last year with 450 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns with the Tennessee Titans as a rookie. He's 6'2", 243. I mean, if you can run that fast, that's kind of scary to me. But what I'm really looking at is the Tennessee Titans depth chart overall and where they stand in terms of receivers, you know, to go with my monologue here. They have Treylon Burks. The next guy after him, Nick Westbrook, Ikine, Kyle Phillips, Chris Moore. Outside of Treylon, there is virtually nobody here. They don't have anyone in the tight end room. Josh Weil is their second tight end. So this team is very depraved at the skill positions besides Derrick Henry. And the way that I look at the Tennessee Titans situation right now, Treylon Burks is the number 1, and I would say based on production last year, Chig is probably the number 2 guy that they're looking at. And that leads me to believe that there's a lot of opportunity here for a guy like Chig to get out there. Now, if Will Levis gets on the field, I think there's a good shot. You know, usually rookie quarterbacks go to dump-offs and tight ends heavily early in their career. So I think there's a chance that Chig also gets utilized in those areas. And so I think there's a good chance that there's a breakout. Now, we're talking about a guy that is in the vicinity on Sleeper of 122 as his ADP. He's like the 14th or 15th tight end off the board. So being way down on the list, he's going around Dalton Kincaid, you know what I mean? It doesn't take a lot of draft capital to get this guy. And I think there may be an established workload for him going into this season, especially if he takes that leap forward going into year 2. So my monologue about Chig, over.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he has the opportunity to be the number 2 target on the team. He kind of even was last year as a rookie tight end. He was second on the team in receiving yards, which isn't saying a lot because the team only had 3,200 yards passing. And it was only 450 receiving yards, but that was still second on the team. He was up there in catches, had 3 touchdowns. So he's going to be the second option, I believe, unless, you know, we don't know where D-Hop, if he's signed by the time you're listening to this, where he went or where he goes. But if all things stay the same, to me, he's the clear number 2 option. And the Titans I don't think are going to be good. I don't think their passing game is going to be that great. But if you're the number 2 option as the tight end, you're still going to get some work. And it's not like he's not talented either. You list off some of his metrics. He's a speedy tight end. He was drafted, I think, in the 3rd round. I want to say 3rd or 4th round. So it's not like he was an undrafted guy. So he has a little bit of some capital. He screams breakout tight end in terms of his opportunity and where he's going to. On Sleeper right now, he's, what is that, tight end 15?
Yeah.
So it's a good spot to take him. Low risk, high reward. And I think he's a guy who, if you miss out on some of these top tight ends, he's a guy that I'd be taking for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that the pro, like we don't spend a lot of time on rookie tight ends. As you can see, we didn't really talk about Sam Laporta in some of these fellows that came in this year. So, obviously, I'll give some of his workout metrics, but this is a guy that like some people were talking about. I literally only knew about Chig early in the season last year because I was playing Madden and he was really fast. So I was like, I get this guy on my team. I like fast things. But anyway, he has 96th percentile 40-yard dash, 92nd percentile speed score. This is just at the tight end position. 69th percentile burst score, 40th percentile agility score, 59th percentile catch radius. So some really good things there for Chig to take with him as he goes into his season where he can break out. And if he ends up like a top 6 or 7 tight end in fantasy football, you might have a guy that you can play on a week-to-week basis, but it's worth the shot. So, all right, let's talk about the next guy. Pat Freiermuth. This is where we probably would use the dog. Sound effect. I love Pat Freiermuth. I don't know. Why am I so in on Pat Freiermuth and no one else? That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. Pat Freiermuth, did he come from the same draft as Chig? Or no?
He was the Kyle Pitts draft.
Oh, he was a Kyle Pitts draft. So his rookie season, Kyle Pitts had 1,000 yards receiving, but Pat Freiermuth,
one touchdown.
He had way more touchdowns than on his career. Kyle Pitts has 3 receiving touchdowns, and Pat Freiermuth has 9. So I mean, there's that. But last year he had 98 targets, 63 catches, 732 yards, only 2 receiving touchdowns. So he was actually worse on a points per game basis last year than he was his rookie year in PPR. But he finished higher because the tight end position is just butthole a lot of the time. So obviously there's different. We talked about Steelers situation on the last show, and Rick called me out, said you got too many guys here. You got too many
Steelers guys.
Too many Steelers guys. Now there is this. Pat Freiermuth has showed that he can be a success in the NFL, so this is one of those guys that I will bite the bullet on in terms of the target tree, because this team does have a lot of receiving talent on their team.
He's probably the third option.
Yeah, I would say he's the third option on this team. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and they also signed Allen Robinson this offseason. So I don't know Allen Robinson's upside at this point, but Pat Freiermuth is probably going to be the third target on this team, which, isn't great. But with him going as the 8th tight end off the board, it's a little bit less of a sleeper, but he's going around pick like 80 to 90. So he's
10th on Underdog too.
10th on Underdog? Okay. So he's been going a little bit lower, and I think it's because you have guys like George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Allen Robinson on the team that could steal targets. But the big question is, does Kenny Pickett take a step forward? Because if he takes a step forward, I think that a guy like Freiermuth will get, if he gets 100 targets, he gets 100 targets. If he catches 70, 80 passes, 800 yards and gets the 7 touchdowns, he moves up into the top 5, 6, or 7 of fantasy football at the tight end position. So I think there's a chance that could happen. Positive regression in the in the touchdown department for Pat Freiermuth. And then if he takes another step forward and they target him a little bit more because of his talent, there's some good things there. So I like Pat Freiermuth. I'm going to continue drafting him. I think that he could be, if you don't get a tight end in the top 6, you can draft Pat Freiermuth and be okay.
Agreed. I don't know what his ceiling is with Kenny Pickett and Deontay and Pickens there, but it's interesting. We used the positive touchdown regression for Cole Kmet last year as an argument, and a lot of people didn't like that. I actually had a little snippet on Fantasy Pros on their website saying about Cole Kmet and his positive touchdown regression, and it ended up being the case. He had it took him a little bit. Beginning of the season, he was kind of bad, but He ended up having like 6 or 7 touchdowns, and because of that, he had an okay season. And I think Freiermuth's going to be similar. I don't see a huge target increase or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he was still the tight end 7 last year with 2 touchdowns. So if he has the same amount of targets, same amount of yards, but he gets 5 or 6 touchdowns, you're looking at probably the tight end 6 or even 5. I don't know if he goes that high, but I think if you're missing out, like you said, on those top guys, he should be the next guy. Like on Underdog, they have Njoku and Evan Ingram higher than him. I don't think that's I think right after you get past Waller, and even there's an argument to be made for him ahead of Waller. I think you should be drafting Freiermuth. So he is definitely a sleeper.
Yeah, agreed. Rick, why don't you tell us about our next guy, Greg Dulcich?
Yeah, he's kind of one of those random guys that I've liked so far in the offseason. He's just going so low. Like on Sleeper, you got Tyler Higbee ahead of him. You got Kincaid ahead of him. 2 guys that I don't think should. You got Gerald Everett right behind him. So you're kind of in the abyss at this point for tight ends. And he had a pretty good rookie season on a team that really struggled passing the football last year, in which Sean Payton coming in, it could be Russ sucks. We're going to find out this year. But if it was just the Nathaniel Hackett situation, then the Broncos could have a better passing offense this year. And even if Russ still sucks, with Sean Payton, I think you would expect him to do at least slightly better than he did last year. And again, for a rookie, he had a pretty good year. Coming into the NFL, he was considered to be a pass-catching tight end. He was a 3rd-round pick. I know he was I think you actually liked him in some dynasty leagues, took him in like the late 4th round. And he ended up having a good year. He only played 10 games last year, right? 10 games. And he put up the same numbers as Chig. He had 33 catches, 411 yards, 2 touchdowns in 10 games. And he only started in 6 of them. So if you take out the games that I actually won't take out the games that he didn't start. I'll include his whole rookie season. 56 catches, 699 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's not that different than what Freiermuth did last year. It's a little less in terms of yards and catches. But that's it. And that was as a rookie. So I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 tight end. He won't, unless Russell Wilson goes back to MVP level. But as you said, we're looking for guys who I think could be top targets as well. He's not the 1st or 2nd option, but I think you can make the argument that he's the 3rd option in that offense behind Jeudy and Sutton. And as much as I love Jeudy, he is a little injury prone, and kind of so is Sutton. So if one of those guys goes down, he becomes, I think, the 2nd option. So he has the opportunity. He had a good rookie season. He has the talent. So he has a lot of he checks all the boxes there. And considering he's like the 18th tight end, I think off the board, something like that, 17th tight end. He's worth a flyer for sure. Yeah.
I do think there's some issues with Greg Dulcich, and I'm not besmirching the draft selection if you choose to do it, because I'm probably going to be in the box of drafting Dulcich in some redraft leagues as well. And I don't dislike him. I think it's a good draft selection, but there was you remember the Albert O talk?
Yes.
Last year. They traded this offseason for Adam Trotman from the Saints. So there's a couple of who I believe, if I remember right, Adam Trotman was drafted by Sean Payton.
He was.
So I don't know what that means, but and Trotman has not been a pass catching tight end for the most part in the NFL. He's more of a blocking inline tight end. So I would say that that's not going to affect it. And Greg Dulcich had some opportunities, but this is by far to me the most risky of the tight ends that we have. If you're taking ADP entirely out of it. I think if you're drafting tight ends, obviously I like Chig better. I like Pat Freiermuth better. Let's look at the list again. See who we talked about already. Yeah, and the 2 other guys that we're going to talk about, I like a little bit better than them, him as well. But There's definitely some good things. I like his build. I like his ability, and I like most of the things that Rick said. So I think there's some good things to be said with Greg Dulcich, but I think the risk comes in the fact that Russ is really the one that drives the entire boat in this situation. Because if he sucks, then I don't think Dulcich can get any better than he did last year in terms of fantasy football. So it's really like, everyone was all hyped up on Alberto last year. And then the Denver Broncos sucked, and Dulcich ended up stepping forward. But I don't think if they end up being as efficient offensively as they were last year, then I don't want a single fantasy asset on this team. Sorry, I love you, Jerry Jeudy. But like it was that bad.
Even Jeudy?
I might take Jeudy, but it was that bad in Denver to the point where things just especially I might consider Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, but if you're talking about a guy if I knew that they weren't going to be good this year, I would definitely be out on Greg Dulcich.
That's fair.
But I don't think they're going to be bad. I really don't. I think they're going to take a step forward this year, and they're at least going to be mediocre. Because I don't tie all. If I have to be fair. I have to be fair.
Yeah, you do.
If I look at Mac Jones and I blame coaching staff, because that situation was way worse than the Broncos, and I don't want to blame Mac Jones, then I can't really blame Russ for the crap situation he was put in with Nathaniel Hackett. So I think, I don't think Russ is that quarterback anymore, but I do think that they can still command a top 15 offense with Sean Payton.
Absolutely.
And if they do make those improvements, then Dulcich is good, and I'm willing to take that risk.
And without looking it up, do you know where Denver finished last year in yards per game passing? Just take a guess.
I want to say 30.
Right. That's how it felt. They were 19th.
Oh, interesting.
So they passing wise, it's just because the expectations were so high. They weren't good.
What were they in scoring?
Russ wasn't good, but it wasn't the bottom of the league.
What were they in scoring?
What is it?
I said, what were they in scoring?
Probably pretty low. Let me look.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to give me a second.
Yeah,
find it.
But either way,
we want to do points per game, offense points per game.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, they were dead last.
Yep. Yeah.
That's total offense.
They couldn't finish.
I wonder what passing.
Yeah, but that shows you with the yardage that they are capable of moving the ball, which the Patriots were in that same boat. They were capable of moving the ball. They just
the Patriots were 20th.
They couldn't get
passing touchdowns.
Get in the red zone.
There were teams that were worse.
Yeah.
Than Denver. The Jets were worse.
Oh yeah.
The Steelers, who we just talked about, and we're high on those guys, were worse. The Rams were worse. The Giants were worse.
I mean, they went with Mitch half the season though.
The Titans were worse.
Yeah,
the Falcons were worse.
I think Dulcich will be fine. I think they're definitely. I think he's the riskiest. If the Broncos do what the Broncos did last year, then obviously you got a bust on your hands and you wasted a draft selection. But otherwise,
but he still had moments last year.
Yeah, no, he had moments, but I don't.
So
think, I don't
even
think
if the Broncos suck,
I don't think he's a tight end with the talent that they have at the receiver position. I don't think he can overcome the suck.
No, he wouldn't have a great year. I'm not saying that, but last year in the games that he played on a terrible, bottom of the line, if that's what they are again this year, he still had an okay. It paced out, he still had an okay season. He still, I think, would have been a top 10 tight end, just about. So. I wonder where he was points per game, but yeah, no, I understand risk factor, and all those things do play into it. But I do think he has potential, and if you have an improved offense, could have a good year.
Agreed. Let's talk about the Pats.
Okay,
Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, do you finally get to talk about a Patriot player?
Oh. He sucked last year. Oh, God. I don't know if it was him. But schematically, which I'm shocked by, you're coming from an offensive situation, Mike McDaniel, where you had George Kittle.
Yeah, but the San Francisco 49ers and Mike McDaniel have a rule about tight ends that they will not play if they cannot block.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
Mike Gesicki does not block.
I'm surprised Bill doesn't go by that adage.
I know that feels like a Bill thing, doesn't it?
This is another team, though, that is in the same boat of the DeAndre Hopkins news, so that might change things offensively if he does sign in the next couple days.
Yeah.
This podcast is not launched. But as of right now, they have Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Tyquan Thornton. Those are the main guys. After that, it's just kind of like a poop show of wide receivers. I would say Juju is basically just what Jacoby Myers is, and then everyone else is just kind of like a role receiver. And in my mind, that would make, to me, Mike Gesicki the second or third target. Now, there's a question of, because they brought Gesicki in, right?
Yep.
Hunter Henry becomes the blocking inline tight end. Now, he can still catch and do things, but I don't think Hunter Henry is going just, daily watching the Patriots stuff because I'm a Pats fan, and being connected to the situation. Hunter Henry is probably not going to be the guy. Like, he's going to be out there and he's going to be running routes, but he's not going to be the main guy. They brought Gesicki in to run routes and basically play in the slot. And I think that you're going to get a lot of opportunity from Mike Gesicki in the Patriots offense. So he could be the second or third option depending on what they're running. If they're running 12 personnel, you're most likely going to have 2 wide receivers on the field, which would most likely be, Juju and somebody else. And you would have, and that might not be the case, but, and you'll have 2 friggin' tight ends, and one of them's going to run a route, or both of them. So we'll see what they do with Mike Gesicki, but I think there's going to be opportunity for him, even if he's the third guy on the offense. It's funny that he could be the second tight end on the team and be the third guy because the Patriots have nobody to throw the ball to. But his profile is ridiculous if you look on Player Profiler. 95th percentile 40-yard dash, 96th percentile speed score, 99th percentile burst score, 98th percentile agility score, and 100th percentile catch radius.
Wow.
That freaking profile is insanity.
Well, he was an early second-round pick. Like, he was highly sought-out prospect as well. Like, he was considered to be a potentially great tight end. And even early on in his career, he showed flashes of that. I mean, even not last year, but the year before that, 2021, he was the tight end 9 and had a really, really good year. I think he had 73 catches, 780 yards, and only 2 touchdowns. But if he had the touchdowns up, he would have had a monster season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he's clearly shown flashes of being a really good receiving tight end. Last year, obviously, did not happen with Mike McDaniel, and he kind of got buried, kind of like Elijah Moore, buried in the depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, with New England, he's going to have opportunity. Assuming DeAndre Hopkins doesn't sign there, it's Juju is your 1. And then the next couple spots, I think, are wide open.
Yeah.
It could be Tyquan. It could be Hunter Henry. It could be Devontae Parker. But it could also be Mike. I could see a realistic possibility where Mike Gesicki is the second target in the offense.
He's got to earn it.
Ahead of Hunter Henry, as you said. Because Henry's not a great blocking tight end either, but he's, I think, better than Gesicki.
Yeah.
So Gesicki's probably going to be used, like you said, in the slot. He's going to be used all over the field.
You want to know the kicker, though?
What is that?
176 is his ADP.
Well, and that's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
Is he's virtually free. He's going, what is that? That's like undrafted, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
He's pretty much undrafted. Mm-hmm. On Underdog, it's even worse, dude. You know what he's going on Underdog?
Is it like 2s?
Almost. He's pick 190 and he's tight end 24.
Oh my god, dude.
So he's up there with like Michael Mayer, Hayden Hurst, Trey McBride, Isaiah Likely. Juwan Johnson's ahead of him, Sam Laportier is ahead of him, Taysom Hill is ahead of him, Dawson Knox is ahead of him, Tyler Conklin is ahead of him, Irv Smith is ahead of him.
Yeah.
He's free. He's virtually free. And he's getting slept on for sure because he should be at least, I would say he's 10 and 24 right now, so I would say he should be at minimum 5 spots higher, probably more.
Yeah.
I think
there's definitely, if you want to talk about the concern side of it, I think a lot of people are definitely, they're concerned about how bad the Patriots and Mac Jones were last year. and being disconnected from the situation and not really knowing what's going on, you can attribute that to bad offensive line, Max being a bad quarterback or a bust in the NFL, or a lot of different things. And if you dig deeper, there's a lot more deeper individual situations going on, i.e. having a defensive coordinator as your offensive coordinator. But I think they also look at Hunter Henry being here, and how is that going to work? So I think this one does carry some risk in terms of what the expectations are, because Gesicki could just not be the guy. But I do think that he is a very talented receiving tight end, and if they can get that out of him, like the Dolphins did last year, not last season, but the year before that, and get him a lot of targets.
He has the ability to do it. For sure.
And he'll be a good fantasy football tight end. I remember when Hunter Henry first signed with the Patriots and everyone was kind of out on him. And then all of a sudden he ended up being a really good tight end that year. So I think Gesicki could be in that same wheelhouse, especially if they don't bring in DeAndre Hopkins. Now, if they do, that kind of changes things a little bit. I still like Mike Gesicki, because I do think that in the red zone, they'll obviously be looking for DeAndre Hopkins, maybe Devontae Parker if they keep him around. But I do think that Gesicki is going to be a guy they target in the red zone. But it's going to be a lot of I think his ceiling gets capped with D-Hop on the team. So just keep that in mind. You ready to talk about the next guy?
Yes.
Okay. Final guy is Dalton Schultz. Rick really has liked this guy over the last couple years. He did not sign a contract with the Dallas Cowboys and left their football team. Right now, his ADP is currently right around the same as Cole Kmet's, Dalton Kincaid's, Chig's ADP. And the big situation with Dalton Schultz is that he's going to a football team in Houston who they have a new quarterback, CJ Stroud, and they have a situation there. Now, this could be a really bad look for Dalton Schultz. It could be a situation where it isn't the best. But my computer is freezing up. Rick, you still there?
Yeah.
You're good. Okay. All right. I don't know what I thought. It went silent, and I was.
I could take the Dalton Schultz.
Oh yeah, I know.
Take
you could.
for you.
I was quickly going through some of the situations. But yeah, so I'll let Rick tell you why you should get Dalton Schultz. But yeah, his ADP, is low, and he's on a football team that has Nico Collins as their wide receiver 1. They also brought in Robert Woods. They have John Mechie. So there's some guys that can compete for the number 1 slot there. Tank Dell. But the way that I look at it is that there's a really good chance that the best receiving option year 1 for Stroud is probably Dalton Schultz at the tight end position. And they're obviously going to get their wide receivers involved and stuff like that. But this could be a year where Schultz gets a lot of run, a lot of target share, similar to what he did in his successful years with Dallas, where he had 104 targets in 2021, 78 catches, 808 yards, and 12.3 fantasy points per game, where he finished as the number 5 tight end in fantasy football. So that could very well be the case that you get for Dalton Schultz. I do think with the rookie quarterback and the bad team, I don't know that he can reach 8 touchdowns, but there's definitely a higher ceiling than where he's kind of getting drafted at this point.
Yes, and this will be a kind of a hot take. And it's going to be an unpopular one because a lot of the fantasy community does not like Dalton Schultz. And I get it because he's not anything special. He's not like an elite talent. Mm-hmm. And some people have just said that he's had good seasons because of the situation with Dallas, which I think is, could be a good argument.
Yeah.
And you said I've been high on him in the past. I just look at the numbers, man. In 2020, he was the tight end 12 in PPR. Everybody was out on him. Then in PPR, 2021, he was the tight end 3. Everybody was out on him. He's a fluke, whatever. He missed 2 games last year and was still tight end 11. So he's still tight end 1. And every year you've drafted him, he's been pretty much worth it. Last year, maybe not, but he was still kind of worth it. He was like an 8th or 9th round pick. It wasn't like he was drafted super high.
Mm-hmm.
And he was still low end tight end 1.
Yeah.
And now with Houston, even if you don't think he's like this elite skilled tight end,
mm-hmm.
as you said, he's probably not the wide receiver, but he's probably he could be the top receiving option with Houston. I think one of Nico Collins or John Mechie will probably take that title. One of them is going to step up, but he's still going to be probably the second option. And who's usually a rookie quarterback's best friend is a tight end, usually.
Yeah.
So he has all these things going for him. CJ Stroud's a pocket passer. So even if you don't think CJ Stroud's going to have a great year one as a rookie, you're not expecting a great year from him. I think he has a good enough year where he can support a tight end as a low end tight end one again. And I think that's what he's going to be. I don't expect him to be a top 5 tight end again or anything crazy, but you know what you're getting out of Dalton Schultz. He's been consistent over the last 3 years, even on a new team where you're probably going to see less passing volume, but you could see an increased target share for their team. So I still am okay with Dalton Schultz again, especially where he's going. On Sleeper, he's a little higher. I think he's tight end 10 or 11. He's tight end 11.
Yeah.
I think on Underdog, he's like tight end, I want to say, I can pull it up. He's tight end 13. So it's tight end 13. Yeah, I'm taking that all day. And even tight end 11, I'm good with. I think after you get past the elite group and then you get past Freiermuth, I think you can make an argument for Schultz right after that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
So, yeah.
But there is, after our last mock draft, Rick was kind of like, who do we draft here? A tight end.
It still does get gross.
It still does get gross, but there are options. There are options for you. So, there are your sleeper tight ends for Fantasy Football 2023. Exciting show. We are going to do sleeper quarterbacks. Excuse me. That's going to be even harder. We're going to have to dig for that one. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. See you later.
Take it easy.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.